let's continue with our tour at the Inn of the Good Samaritan, halfway between Jericho and Jerusalem. This area has been called the Inn of the Good Samaritan since the Byzantine era. It is so named because of the response Jesus gave when he was asked, "Who is my neighbor?" He answered with a story. A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey and brought him to an inn and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. "Look after him," he said, "and when I return I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have." The Samaritan had a large view of who was his neighbor. It has often been pointed out that the priest and Levite may have avoided contact because of the fear of being ritually defiled by touching a dead body. However, the Samaritan took him to an inn. The inn at this site of the Good Samaritan would have been the obvious location for this particular story. In more recent history, this site has remained an inn, a convenient stopping point, as shown in this very old postcard. In the distance, you will see the remains of the watchtower of Herod the Great, as mentioned in the last segment. Although the ancient buildings at this site would have been dismantled, here we see a cave dwelling that dates back to the Second Temple period. The terrain around this inn is still very rugged. Caves make for good shelter, and across the highway can be seen some additional cave dwellings. In another large cave at the site, you can get out of the desert into cool air to watch the site's orientation film. They have found footage of a silent film from the 1920s enacting the very story of the Good Samaritan. But the best part of that movie is that it was shot right here on this very site 100 years ago.
השודדים פוצעים אותו, והוא נשאר לבד באמצע הדרך. שני עוברי אורח מתעלמים מהפצוע. הם לא עוצרים להושיט לו יד וממשיכים בדרכם. והנה מגיע למקום אדם שלישי, השומרוני מעלה אותו על חמורו ומוביל אותו לאכסניה בה נמצא כיום מבנה המוזיאון. הוא משאיר את הפצוע אצל בעל האכסניה, משלם מראש עבור הטיפול והאירוח ונפרד מהם לשלום. המושג השומרוני הטוב הפך ביטוי לאדם המסייע לאחר באופן מיידי וללא תמורה. הוא מזכיר לנו מצווה האמורה בתורה, לא תעמוד על דם רעך. בעיקרה של מצווה זו, עזרה לזולת.
The orientation film also finds a way to tie this site to the hit comedy series of the 1990s, Seinfeld, in its final episode.
All right. Hold it right there. What? You're under arrest.
What? No, we didn't do anything.
That's exactly right. The law requires you to help or assist anyone in danger as long as it's reasonable to do so.
I've never heard of that.
It's new. It's called the Good Samaritan law.
Today, the main purpose of the museum here is to preserve mosaics from various places in Israel. Possibly the most important is a mosaic that was found in Shilo. It attests to the fact that the location of biblical Shilo was known in the Byzantine era. Let's listen in.
At the foot of the remains of an ancient biblical city, the inscription in Greek reads, "Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy on Shilo and its inhabitants. Amen." It attests to the presence of a large Christian community at the place called Shilo during the Byzantine period. The preservation of the name Shilo is further testimony to the presence of biblical Shilo near the current location of the church. Shilo was the capital of the Israelite tribes for 369 years before Jerusalem. The tabernacle was located at Shilo, and from there, 7 of the tribes settled their territories. At Shilo, Hannah prayed for his son, and Eli the priest received bitter news that the Ark of the Covenant had been captured by the Philistines.
This next explanation talks about the triangular pieces in the mosaics.
By 2 triangular ears. In Latin, this is called tabula insata, which means tablet with ears. Dedication inscriptions were once engraved or written on wooden tablets. To attach these to walls without damaging the inscription, additional triangular pieces were added into which nails were hammered. When mosaics became popular, inscriptions went from walls to mosaic floors, and although the triangular elements were no longer functional, they remained part of the design. The next time you see a tabula insata, you can guess that it contains a blessing, dedication, or memorial.
Also at the museum is a room dedicated to understanding the modern-day Samaritans.
In the photographs, you'll see the traditional way they celebrate Passover in Sukkot, in Mount Gerizim, and in Shilo. The Samaritans take their name from their historical and current place of residence in Samaria, not far from the biblical city of Samaria, which was the capital of the Kingdom of Israel. Since that time, the Samaritans still face Mount Gerizim when they pray, and so do their synagogues. Look at mosaic number 2, in the Samaritan synagogue of El Chirvik. It reveals elements that appear Jewish. A large candelabrum made of pomegranates and horns of plenty. At its foot, an incense pan, one of the temple implements, the table of showbread.
One of the best preserved mosaics at this site is from a monastery in the north.
In Arabic means monastery. Der Kala, located below the community of Peduel in Samaria, was one of the monasteries that separated Christian from Samaritan territories during the periods of struggle in the 5th and 6th centuries.
Here is a bit more description of its floor.
Look at the row closest to you. In the center of the row, you'll see an amphora, a vessel in which liquid, grain, or fruit was stored. Grapevines emerge from the amphora and create the medallions. The middle column of medallions is decorated with geometric patterns and trees.
There is also an exhibit to show how mosaics are moved to this location and in some cases restored when stones are found missing. Before we leave, let's walk out to the overlook. It's a short walk westward to the edge of the hill that looks out towards Jerusalem. We can't show you a view from 2,000 years ago, or even 200. But we can pan our camera today and look at the modern road that still heads up to Jerusalem. In the far distance, the highest ridge is the Mount of Olives. Whether it's a modern view or an ancient one, Jerusalem still stands, and there is still a road to get there. Some things never change. So what is the moral of the story of the site? Rather than asking, "Who is my neighbor?" this site reminds us to simply be a neighbor wherever we can. Until next time, this is Bob Odell from Root Source saying, Shalom.